Welcome everyone to the Blacks in Technology Bit Tech Talk podcast, a show where we talk to Black people who are engineers, innovators, educators, inventors, changemakers, and entrepreneurs doing amazing things in the world of technology. The Bit Tech Talk podcast is where they show how they are stomping the divide by sharing their stories, experiences, ideas, knowledge, and perspective on tech with the Bit community.
Welcome everyone to the Blacks in Technology Bit Tech Talk podcast. I'm your host and also the founder of the Blacks in Technology organization, Greg Greenlee, and I'm delighted tonight to have Dr. Marquicia Pierce on the show. Dr. Marquicia Pierce is the founder and principal consultant at Ruby Leaf Media. It's a science, media, and communications company. She empowers tech accelerators and investors to support their portfolio companies in the STEM fields, and she has consulted over 100 science professionals, academics, and entrepreneurs, guiding them through their startup journey. So I'd like to welcome Dr. Marquicia to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. Thanks.
Thank you. We definitely appreciate it. So let's jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you're from, your education, all that good stuff.
Sure. So I like to start off by saying I'm a military kid. My parents served in the military. My dad did 20 years in the Marines and my mom did 25 years in the Army. So we moved all over the place, all over the states, and I call Michigan home. My grandparents was there, most of our family was there, and so even though we moved so many places, we would always come back to Michigan. I now currently reside and spend a lot of my time in Columbus as well, during
Ohio?
Yep, Columbus, Ohio. Yep.
Okay, so you're right down the street from me. I'm in Cincinnati.
Yeah, we met at one of the Black Tech meetups in Cincinnati. I think that's how we first.
Oh, we did. Yep. Oh man, I'm terrible. Sorry.
Right down the street. Okay. We were in Cincinnati, my husband and I, for a little while, and then we moved to Columbus for a job opportunity that he had, and I continued to work via virtual land with a lot of my clients still in Michigan, and looking to branch out to the Ohio ecosystem as well. We did undergrad. I was pre-pharm in Michigan at Calvin College, now Calvin University, and then transferred to Purdue University for biology. By that time, I realized that pharmacists did actually do the research around all of these drug discovery and inventions. And so by that time, I was already into undergraduate research. I was a McNair Scholar, and that really opened my eyes to it takes a team, it takes a village, and being able to be on the research side of tech was where my primary focus was. It was there where I learned the camaraderie that could come with the lab and being able to work on a team to solve like a really big, important problem. So after my bachelor's at Purdue, I pursued my PhD at Vanderbilt University. And then what opened my eyes was, hey, in order to get these cool technologies outside of the lab, you usually have to start up a company. You have to put together an interdisciplinary team. They call it tech commercialization, which is really, fancy way of saying you have to have different milestones and people involved to push the tech out to the market to actually benefit the people who need them. And so at that time, I was supplementing my PhD. I did a PhD in molecular physiology, but I was interested in management. How do you manage a tech in this particular manner? How do you get a team together with business people and clinicians and researchers to make sure the story makes sense? And so I audited a lot of engineering courses and management courses to kind of supplement that perspective. So by the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to be in that tech commercialization space. And I did an MBA while I was doing a postdoc, which was a really unique setup because the team that I was working with, they were on the research side looking to commercialize or actually push out a oncology therapeutic. It's called Hibiscus Biopharma. I was a postdoc at Michigan State University, and that team wanted to build a company around this tech, and it was a great opportunity to get the science and continue my journey as a scientist, but also start up a company. I was team member number 3 after 2 academic founders, to get that story up and going and get the company going. And so I kind of chalked that all under this is the education that led me to this particular career path.
Wow, that's pretty fascinating. I'm interested in knowing how many clones of you are there, because how do you do all that stuff? How do you do all that stuff?
Strategic, yeah. Like I wanted to make sure, and it was chaotic. So when I was getting my MBA, I picked a school that was close to my family. I just wanted to. After I got my PhD, I was a little burnt out, and I was like, I need to be around people, grounding, like my sisters. I need to laugh. I need to just be around people to pour into me. And so I picked a MBA program where I could commute there and just be close to home. And this particular campus was literally a block away from where my postdoc was. And so the the executive MBA program, we would meet only on Thursday nights from 6 to 10. And then if you ever hear the story of like the postdoc woes, you're in the lab, you might take a break, but in molecular postdoc training, you're usually running some type of time course. You have to go back up to the lab afterwards and kind of finish the experiment. So some nights I would leave my MBA class and then go back to lab so that I can, finish whatever experiment I had. But it was, I strategically kind of put it close together, so it was almost like my own mini joint program. And my postdoc mentor knew about my MBA, and my MBA faculty, they were supportive, and knowing that I'm also doing some training. Please have grace. So it's kind of chaotic, but family being close by really helped.
Yeah, I bet. How did you get into the science and end of things, and then more specifically into the research part of it? Like, there's you can have your sciences, but like research is a totally different beast altogether.
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to be in science from a really young age. And I think um, in the 90s, what was really going on was there was a lot of um, stories and kids getting into how they could help the AIDS epidemic and how they can be involved. I remember specifically there was a girl that was my age who was born with HIV, and she was talking about her story, and I think it triggered something in me to say, oh, there's something that maybe I could do to help a disease state, and I think that was like one of the turning points. Um, but I went on into undergrad thinking, oh, I need to be a pharmacist because they surely that's the people who they give out the drugs, so they probably make the drugs. So this is why you have to ask questions. It wasn't until like my sophomore year at IEPUI in Purdue, Indianapolis, where I got involved with the McNair Scholars, and they were uh, particularly a group of individuals and faculty members and support system that would help first generation students go through to get their PhD. And it was then where I was like, oh, you're looking for a research track. You're looking to, be
Fun.
on a team. That's not a
Yeah.
pharmacist role. That's a PhD. That's how I got the switch and came to the right path of where it needed to be. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
And for those that's listening, don't get it twisted. Being a pharmacist is still a rigorous curriculum. So, yeah, yeah. So how did you then? Was this kind of like your first, I guess, foray into more of the tech side of it?
I remember when I was undergrad thinking the school that I went to uh, with the mid-air program, they had an undergraduate research program, and you got paired up with a faculty member. And my member, or my faculty mentor, was from the School of Dentistry. And I remember at that time thinking, how do I talk about this research in a way that would make sense to like my siblings and my parents and things like that? And so I kept thinking about, well, if I'm in a school of dentistry, some of the products and some of the things that they might use, obviously, is toothpaste, mouthwash, things like that. And so I always had in the back of my mind, how does this research relate to like a product that I would use all the time, or that my community would use? And I think that kind of sparked the realization that what you're doing in the lab does have to transfer to a company like Colgate, Crest. you know, you have researchers that are thinking on the molecular level. What does that mean for your oral health? But how do you tell that story to a company to have a product that your family might use? I think at the very basic level, that's when I was thinking. There's two sides here that I need to be able to be aware of. I need to learn how to do the science and be disciplined enough to do it, but I also need to, and it was really important to me, be able to share what are you doing in the lab with like my mom and dad. And like, well, what does that mean? What's the purpose of it? What's the end goal for you? How does this benefit um the people that are not in the lab? And I think that that's the part that really kind of said that there's two sides of this that I'd like to explore.
Wow, wow, yeah. It's funny. Like I don't know if a lot of people know like how certain things come to market, and how there's a research phase of this before, and then you have to figure out how to kind of commercialize this entire thing in order for the
Hmm.
market to be able to consume it. I know that people probably know, like, oh yeah, there's these big companies like Procter and Gamble, and they have their, but like I don't know if they know like everything that's involved. So it's interesting to hear like from that base level side of how things come to the market. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. But what excited you about going into the field of science? Like I know you shared your story around the whole AIDS epidemic, but once you like kind of got into it, like what was it that was exciting that kept you in the field?
When I was in grad school, I did a project where we got a chance to work with another small business that was trying to, at the time, there was a couple of projects that I had, but one of them was, it was a company that was trying to use the database that Vanderbilt was producing around clinical de-identified data. What do they do in their hospital and their clinical trials? And they were trying to make it available to the public, and they wanted to have people like a committee around it to kind of say, well, here's how we can do this ethically, and here's how we can have a business story around it, and here's also how do we share with the public why we're doing this, to get their consent, to get their trust, to give them equitable access to the findings that we would have later on. And I think that particular project really, it was the first time I was able to talk to other business owners, other like law students. They had a couple of other students on like the committee, and what we said about how we think this project should go so that it could be equitable and trustworthy for the whole community was taken to heart, and it actually was implemented in the policies that they did. And that's what kind of
Nice.
was like, oh, I can work and talk to other people, and it actually can produce something worthwhile and useful. So I think, so I didn't, they call it lab hands. I didn't really have great lab hands. Like I would do an experiment in the lab a couple of times, usually it wouldn't work, but I could tell based off of how my colleagues are moving through things, that I was a lot more interested in how do you tell the story? How do I get other people involved? Can we do something together? What's the teamwork here? And so while I was writing the dissertation, I was really interested in how other people were doing their during their training and things like that. And so I think that really stuck with me. Like, how do you translate this stuff? And what's exciting, and it's still exciting now. So recently, I get a chance to work with a lot of founders. They're professors who are going through the process. They've gone through the rigorous training, scientifically, how to get their tech. But that training usually doesn't include, well, how do you put together a business plan? How do you put together a team? How do you delegate things that are non-technical to your team? And how do you turn that tech story into business story so that you can get strategic partnerships, so you can get funding, so you can get people to put on or be a part of your story. And it's being an entrepreneur coach is a lot of therapy. It's a lot of sessions of, like, here's how I can connect you to others, and being able to know what they've done in the past. It really excites me to bring something new, like a new perspective, to something that they've been entrenched in so long, and say, well, that's great, let's think of it in a different way. That's what really excites me.
So I'm very nice. I'm really interested in knowing if that's the normal, I guess, cadence or pattern um, that happens with, I guess, within the commercialization um, of a new product, new medical device or something like that. The reason why I'm asking is because, like, there's always people out there that they're going to be skeptics of
Hmm.
the process, and it was interesting for me to hear you talk about things being equitable. And when it comes to, like, quote unquote big pharmacy and all these large medical companies, like, people have they're skeptical about their intentions and what they're doing. And so when you said that, I was like, oh well, I wonder if that's like kind of the normal pattern for a lot of these. It would be good to know, because then maybe people could kind of taper a little of their skepticism about some of these, because no matter what, like, you're going to have people that are big pharmacy, they're out to get us, they're out to do this, they're out to control us, and that type of thing. But it's always good to kind of hear, like, someone on the quote unquote inside. uh, and so I'm just kind of wondering, is that a normal process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would answer it in twofold. So when I talk to my colleagues, particularly ones that look like me, who are interested in underrepresented communities or underestimated communities, people who are wanting to take an innovation, and I work with companies that are really early stage. So they're the most
Mhm.
optimistic. They're the most they're
Right.
most um, uh, dreamy about what their technology can
Yeah.
do, and they're
They're here
really
to change the
asking.
world.
Yeah, exactly. They're really asking these questions, and so a lot of my colleagues and the first time founders, they're really in tune with why they're trying to get this commercialization project up and going. Whether that's a new therapeutic, whether that's a new software company that would help connect hospitals to maybe marginalized communities, whether it's a medical device that would be amazing for people of different shades, different sizes. Some of those things come to bear. And so what I like hearing about those particular conversations is, before they get to an exploratory path where you're really focusing in on how we can make a difference and what the milestones are. Those conversations are really inclusive, and the people who are doing the research, they're also making sure, there's some things that aren't right in clinical trials and how they recruit and how people use the data. How do we change that conversation or make it accessible? um, one of the founders that I really love working with, she's looking at how we could use AI to start making predictions of different molecules. And she's already thinking about, well, the data that we input into the algorithm, it needs to be diverse. It needs to have these different types of perspectives so that you could build a strong foundation. And there's a lot of people who are advancing that perspective, even with the big companies. One of the uh, maybe she'll be my colleague one day. But one of the people that I really enjoy following is Dr. Joy from the she has like this algorithmic justice leagues where she just had a Netflix documentary.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the people on the ground building these things take into account the biases of just human nature and being inclusive about the training and the talent to ask these questions is how you do that. And so building that team is super important. And I'm on the more optimistic side with the new founders, and they're getting their milestones. But it's more we have a long way to go, but it's more prevalent now of at least including in your story how do you account for these particular things. And it helps when you, like you said, you have people who look like you who are telling what they're doing about it, but also showing that I'm speaking out so that other new companies and other new innovations that are going in the pipeline also are aware of this. I don't know, that might have been a long-winded way of
No,
saying that there's hope.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I definitely appreciate the answer. I mean, it essentially the new generation is holding us down. So I like that. I like that. So yeah. So let's talk a little bit about Ruby Leaf Media and what are some of the things that led you to founding this company?
So it's been established since my grad school days, and at first it was a way that I could be able to do small market research projects or small volunteer or uh, scoped based projects in a way that could complement my training. And so I had it on the side for a little while. And recently, what I've learned in just growing in the ecosystem and in figuring out how the ecosystem works around tech commercialization, I noticed that there was people that are connectors in the ecosystem. These are your entrepreneurial support systems. And my time with the Small Business Development Center really showed how they work together. And I continue to, or the goal that I have with the company is to support these partnerships or these organizations when it comes to high tech companies. I'd love to use my PhD, my MBA. The fact that when we started that company with my postdoc team, it was a small drug pharmaceutical company that got acquired. So those you end up seeing steps along the way that could be useful for other founders, and being able to do that on a scalable level, supporting the organizations that are doing that. That's what Ruby Leaf is about, primarily. And then also being able to champion the story around underestimated, underrepresented founders who are doing the journey. They've been in the field, they've been working. Their path sometimes gets overlooked, or sometimes I would say their milestones look a little bit different than maybe the traditional tech founder that gets all the media attention and things like that. But being able to just share and champion the story of founders, the diversity of founders, and how to support them and give them milestones that will make a difference. That's what Ruby Leaf is about. So it started with just being able to
Interesting.
champion my colleagues that were in the postdoc setting. Then I graduated. Then it was founders who were also starting up a company, and then I did that, and then I expanded to the support systems that support them. And it's an extension of how I feel like I can best support this community as I grow as well.
Nice, nice. So, talk to us a little bit about what a typical engagement looks like. Like, what's from like you don't have to go into like every little detail, but like kind of start to finish. Like, give
Yeah.
us an idea on like what that would look like.
Sure. So now that I'm working with organizations, I'll tell you one of my favorites. Actually, it's a typical pathway of how I interact with founders, but it was happening in a group setting. So I had a contract with Michigan State University Research Foundation with a group called Spartan Innovations, and they're tasked with um, the job of making sure that any staff, student, or faculty member that is affiliated with the university, if they have a small business that is around high tech or or innovation that the university is a part of, maybe they've helped provide funding for that patent or for the research to be done. They're tasked with the goal of getting that company or getting that technology out into the world and out into the marketplace. And so, as an entrepreneur in residence, I would work with a faculty member. They have this great idea. We've been working on it for a little while. We might have a patent around it. We've been working with the university. We think that this has the opportunity to serve more people. So the first thing that Spartan Innovation will do is assign them an entrepreneur in residence, and that's somebody to kind of program manage, kind of guide them, kind of connect them to an ecosystem that will give them a good foundation to start to tell that business story of their technology. I recently
Mhm.
had an opportunity to do this on a group scale where they put together an accelerator that was for how to get these founders funding. Funding is like like you need funding. These are really big projects, and so we put together an accelerator for 10 of these founders. So there were some students, some it could have been for postdocs, but all around the state to go through a program where they, at the end of it, they could have a really good chance of getting non dilutive government funding, which means a grant basically to move on for their technology. So we took 10 founders through this program. It was 18 weeks. We were able to work with them one on one. I was giving them access to different people in the community that would help move their story along, whether it was somebody, a lawyer to talk through their intellectual property strategy, whether it was a contract manufacturer who'd say, hey, in order for us to build this for you, we need you to be at this particular level, and giving them basics of how you would form a company, how you would build a business model around it. And they really enjoyed it. It was a great compliment to the training that they already were receiving. They were able to get connected. They were able to have like a checklist of how do you actually go out to get these grants from the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health, the Department of Defense. And so they got connections around those as well. And so at the end of it, they stayed engaged. 18-week accelerator is super hard to do sometimes to stay engaged, but 80% of them finished the program. The ones that went on to pitch their idea for the NSF, they were invited to submit a full proposal. We gave them access to 26 different
Nice.
speakers, 16 different organizations in the state that could help them. And one of them is raising a multi-million dollar round right now off an idea that she put together in the accelerator program. So being able to provide a framework for supporters of these founders is something that excites me. As an individual consultant, I do something very similar. Frameworks. Here's people that you can connect to for funding, for marketing research, things like that. Um, and it looks different for each engagement, but really the whole goal is to work either one-on-one or in a group with founders who are like, I have an idea, what's the first couple of steps can I take to start building it.
And I would think that this is super important, simply because and I'll take me as an example. So there is a for-profit component of Blacks in Technology. So essentially, it's me running a business. And I have an engineering background. And I was like, I don't know the first thing about running a business. So I would think that would be something that is um, that's something that you would come across all the time. Like you have these researchers, these people that are deep into the science and technology part of it, but they're not business people, right? And so having a company such as your company or someone like you in their corner to say, you know, 1, 2, 3, like these are the steps that you need to take. It's incredibly beneficial.
And
Like
it's and
I
it's
like it should be a prereq for anyone starting a company. They should, I feel, should have someone like that, but not everyone does. So yeah,
it's kind of like learning a different language. That's why I usually say it's
exactly.
turn your tech story, which is chock full of great exploration and features of what you've been able to build, and just this cool journey that you've been on, into a business story, which is what are the benefits that of this technology? How will you get it to people? How will you sustain this operation? And it's when I say bridging the gap, it really is this translation, if you will, of we're going from exploratory mode to how do we sustain this and commercialize it.
Yeah, because I would say, just crossing paths with people who are more on the entrepreneurial side, meaning they have the ideas, right? Um, a lot of them that I've come across, they don't have the business side of it. Like even with their own ideas, they don't know the best ways to go, but like who to connect to, the best ways to go about trying to market it, whether or not you need to build an entire prototype out, or if you just like any of that stuff. Like they don't have a full grasp on. Like they have all these wonderful ideas, but they're like, yeah, like, hey, is anyone actually going to buy that? Do you think anyone would buy that? Or how do you scale that if it came to the point to where you needed to scale? So I'll give an example. I won't call out. I have a friend. He had a really good idea. This was not science or tech or anything like that, but he had a really good idea about a product. And so uh, I gave him some advice about having a website and setting up your website to take orders and everything like that. And so he had an Instagram page. And so one of the things that he would do when someone would inquire about like his product, he would say, hey, give me a call. And I would say, hey, like that's not scalable. Like you cannot have everyone who wants to give you a call. Like you need to set up everything on your website. You need to have all your photos of your merchandise and everything there, because your website is there to be able to take all these orders. And you can only take one order at a time if you're on a phone. And sometimes depending on, like, you might run into a scenario where you're on a phone and someone can't get through. Then what?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say, like, I know that there's like this disparity between like people with the big ideas and the business side of it. And what you're doing is kind of bridging, like providing like this kind of scaffold for these people to be able to follow, so that they can get their ideas from just an idea state to hopefully a commercialization state.
Yeah, and there's steps, even though that it might be a different technology. There's steps along the way that are fairly similar. Like you what you were talking about. How can you um, have a framework, or sometimes it's a checklist. Like if you want to get money from the government, you have to apply to these particular grants. They need these three registrations to be done. You need a bank account. You need to be able to have these things in your proposal, um, particularly around innovations that are in the medical field. sometimes you have
Yeah.
to think about your if your customer is a hospital, um, there's a couple of people who have to weigh in on that decision before it even gets to the end user or the patient or the person that you're really trying to provide a service to. And so I'll see a lot of time a founder will have this great idea about a software, a medical device, or something where there's a couple of there's a couple of people that you need their insight and expertise to kind of guide you on what milestone or what step do you need to get to so it makes sense for them before it even gets to the patient. So if you're working with a hospital, or if you think you want to work with a hospital, you're, realistically, you might can only do one or two at a time, and they're thinking about, okay, well, will this integrate with something that we already have? Will this workflow completely disrupt what our clinicians are trying to do? You have this app that is really user friendly for maybe a person in the community or elderly or things like that. But if the information um, is needing to go to a clinician or a healthcare professional, there's different checklists there before you can even talk about the benefits of the patient. And so being able to kind of
Right.
um, frame the story of this is a great idea, here's the benefit for you, the hospital or the clinician, and in turn you'll be able to benefit your patient or somebody in the community. Sometimes telling those different stories, it helps to walk through that with somebody and
Yeah.
then get some they call it customer discovery, but it really is just having a couple of conversations under your belt about what's really the problem that's the main holdup for why something like this doesn't exist in the first place.
And is that why the accelerator program, is that why such a long program? Is it because it's like part of this medical science field, and these things are not, it's not, and I don't mean to demean or anything to any other. So say like Uber, right? For instance, like you take a ride share program or application like that, like that's something that might not take as long in an accelerator because it's not life or death. You're not dealing with patients and you're not dealing with health and medicine and things like that. So they might be able to go through an acceleration program in a month or 2 months as opposed to what is it, 4.5 months that they go through yours. Is it because of the medical field, the science field?
There were two things that led us to try to expand the time that we had with the founders. One
Hmm.
One was the first, it was the second time that we had did the accelerator. And the first time we went through it, we noticed that there needed a little bit more basic business foundation to just kind of say,
Hmm.
this is a framework for how your story is going to be told. We could put this in a business model canvas. You have to really work through who your customer, the problem that you'll solve, the solution, and what that value proposition would be. And we took our time with that.
Hmm.
So we were like 4 weeks just doing that. In the meantime, here's how you would form a company. This is the difference between an LLC or a C Corp. This is how, if you are with a university and you're a faculty member, this is how you disclose that you want to actually have a company that you want to start up, and the proper process to say, to work with your university to actually start a company. That took a little bit longer, and it was a little bit more customized to the founders. I think this next time around it won't be as long. We'll try to condense it,
Hmm.
but it was longer because I did want to include um, in this process where you might have, like I was talking about earlier, you might have a conversation with a customer, an end user, or somebody this project was built for, and that's pretty much all the feedback you need. Will, like in your example, will a customer be willing to get in a car with a stranger? Would they be willing to use the app to call a ride? if you go with that model with the medical device, well, does the patient want a better drug? Well, it'll always be yes, but you have other different types of well, how do you safely manufacture this particular drug or this medical device? How do you talk to the FDA? There's different. It's so regulated that being able to
Yeah.
just be exposed to the regulatory part took a little bit longer. That might not be as prevalent if you were doing a direct to consumer technology. I also put in a month so that we were working on something as um, so that at the end of it you actually had something to turn in. And so we were doing these what I call DIY together types of session, where it was like, okay, the hardest thing that people usually get tripped up on is making sure their financials have a realistic story behind them. So we'll work through it all together. We'll have somebody, kind of come through. We'll look at your cap table or the people who you think will have equity in the company. We'll, work out a strategy. And so I think we really took our time with it. There were some parts that could be condensed, but you're right. There's some things in the medical and the healthcare space where you just need to be
Mhm.
exposed to a lot more pieces in order for it to be um, de-risked, or in order for it to make sense to a funding mechanism
Right.
like a grant or a VC.
Wow. Yeah, that seems pretty like a pretty rigorous process. But I would think that it would need to be when you're dealing with
Yeah,
anything in medicine and healthcare.
and that's why
Yeah.
it really does take a village. Like you could there's things in place for you to get that information somehow. But the purpose of an accelerator is to get you those connections when you're first starting to think about it, so you're not building and turning your wheels on something that's doesn't have the benefit of having the insight of these different people who will ultimately fund or need to partner with you to get it going. Um, uh, it is super complicated, but it definitely is a place where if you have this village or you have the support system, it can be a little bit easier, a lot of it easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would think that I would think it would be fun, like to be you. And I know that it's probably a lot of work, and I'm not, trying to dismiss any of that. But I'm saying from the standpoint of seeing some of this cutting edge stuff, coming to market, and 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 not only that, like I'm pretty sure it's almost it kind of reminds me of not exactly, but like the like how you patent technology. Like in order to get a patent, like the people who are in these patent offices, they have to go through things with a fine tooth comb to make sure you're not infringing on other, and they get to see all these ideas coming to them, like, oh wow, this is incredible, and and they have to, and not only that, but these people also have to have a mind for the field that they are approving patents for. Like you can't just be, Joe Schmo on the street and go work in a patent office, because there's a lot of technical, and a lot of jargon in these patents that you have to know. I would think that from the sciencey side of you, that like has to, like if it was me and it was like all tech stuff and it was stuff coming in all the time, I was seeing all this stuff, like I would kind of geek out on it. So I'm just I'm kind of wondering if you have that same feeling.
I definitely do. You hit it on the head. It's a way to like keep up with the field in a whole different manner. I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I was missing in my PhD journey was it was very academic. It was very, very narrow. Well, obviously it was academic, but it was very narrow, and like, you only had time or to kind of get really, really deep in one particular nuanced
Yeah.
subject. So you could get at the cutting edge of knowledge, but being able to hear how people are trying to innovate on the clinical side, and people are trying to innovate and use AI to help with the process side or the design side, and then seeing how um, these are the questions and experiments that they were taught to do because they're thorough, they're exploratory, they're able to, they're supposed to get really deep and niche. And then this is how you turn it so that it makes sense for people who want to take it in different ways and be able to market it and tell a lot of different type of stories. And founders themselves, they have this way of looking at a perspective, where all it takes is like a spark to be like, oh, I didn't really think of it like that. That makes sense. And so usually they're willing to, like, as soon as you start to volley back and forth, well, have you thought about how particularly you would answer this question when they ask it like this, or how would you collaborate with this team? They'll it's fireworks. And so it's super fun working with them. It's challenging, so you feel like you are building with them, because it could be a very long road, but I really do like it. And being able to work with um, the ecosystem supporters, people who are like, hey, it's our job to write the checks so that we can create jobs, and so that the talent can stay here in the community. And those are the things that they care about. And so being able to support that effort on the ground level is like, okay, here's how you can connect to this abundance of resources. It's just a great place to be. Like, I love it.
Sounds extremely fulfilling. Definitely. You talked about challenges. Let's talk. What has been some of the most challenging aspects of running this type of consulting company?
So I would say it's the most challenging part for me has been, ironically, how do you say you're a bridge builder? Like, how do you package up, um,
Mm,
like the part that I think is really valuable is the expertise that I bring to the table of being a life science um, professional. I had training. I'm trained in molecular physiology. I also complemented that with the MBA. What what how do you uh, have a sustainable company that is the value proposition, but it goes beyond just you? Being able to scale, like we were talking about sustainability. If I'm only serving when I'm on one call with one founder or even a group, how do I continue to bring value in other types of ways? And so I'm learning what does scaling and sustainability mean to a service provider like myself that
yeah,
is bridging. The whole point of it is so that you can disseminate this expertise and connections. And so I'm learning how to package it, and how to share it with groups of people who see the need for that bridge building, and be able to
yeah,
um, uh, who are really trying to champion that support. Because for founders, um, there's a particular time where you need that, but I think the scalability comes from supporting the ecosystem, and not solely just the founders. So
mhm,
I think that's been the challenging part. And I kind of moved and changed ecosystem for the past 10 years. I was serving Michigan and broadening out my footprint as well. I'm learning still, just like every other
yeah.
entrepreneur.
Well, I hope this podcast helps in some ways. Bring people to, because I would think that it seems, when I hear you explain it, it almost sounds like a no brainer to me. It almost sounds like, oh yeah, we definitely need her. Like we need someone like her. Like it shouldn't even be a question. It should just be automatic. But just like everything else, you always kind of have to sell yourself and
Hmm.
sell, like you said, the value proposition to people, because there's some people who don't even know that they might need you or need your services, right? And so how do you reach those people, or how do you communicate that value proposition to them so that light bulb goes off with them, like, oh yeah, this is a no brainer. Let's hire him. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I will say this, like, hopefully when this podcast drops, like there will be people out there not only that can utilize your services, but can also hear what you need and say, hey, like I think I can help her, formulate what that message is for her service. And because I know some people who are really good, with doing that, like, and yeah, so hopefully like this brings like some ears to what you need as well, and they can reach out to you. So
I appreciate that.
um
Yes.
good,
Welcome the conversation.
excellent. So I know you kind of talked to us about like what the engagement is and everything, but what are some of the things that you feel, and this is more like giving some advice that some like startup companies, because you've dealt with a lot of them, should do like in the beginning of their journey that they often miss. Like besides hire you, like yes, hire me, but what are some other things that you should like right off bat, like before you start going down this, do this.
Have more conversations with your
Hmm.
potential customers and who you think your partners would be. They call it customer discovery, and people sometimes think, well, if I just talk to people, like surely people will see the benefit, and I'll go build it, and then I'll come back and present them with something. Um, with
Yeah.
high tech things, with things that have a lot of different people who want to give insight, or you need their insight with, nothing beats really having a conversation and being able to have multiple ones, so that you can almost say it exactly in their words what their biggest pain point is, or what their biggest opportunity or goal is. Because people, when you're able to articulate somebody's problem um, as clear as it is in their head, or how they would say it, people automatically assume that you have the answer for it. It's, oh, you know exactly what I'm going through. Yes, surely whatever you're about to say is beneficial. So being able to have mint dozens, 30, 40 different conversations before you start building helps. And then build kind of out in the open if you can. So what I mean by that is uh, uh, the people who maybe might be your testers, or maybe your users, or like who will see that MVP or that alpha version, whatever. Cultivate a relationship where you are getting their feedback and that you're still having those conversations. Here's what I heard you say. Your problem and pain point was. Here's my solution. Did I get it right? What would you tweak? And just be open to having that very direct dialogue. And be able to implement it, because building something in the dark, especially if you have a long road ahead of you, is hard, more hard than it needs to be. So customer discovery, or in other
Yeah.
words, have more conversations with your customer, with people who could get you to that next steps, who could have the funding for you, who could have the partnership for you. Whoa, what does it take for me to actually engage with your company? What are you looking for? What are the milestones? What are some of the problems that you're going through? And do it religiously and systematically. Like, listen to them,
Yeah.
analyze what they say, and find a way to quickly input it into whatever you're building, and then get that constant feedback loop. That was super long, but talk to more people.
No, that's good.
Talk to more
No,
people.
that's good. I have people who hit me up from time to time in email, and they say they have this idea or whatever, and that's not even my realm. Like I'm not that in that whole startup accelerator scene. I know people that are, and I've taken bits and pieces from conversations I've had with them and things that I see to be able to. And one of the biggest things is it's like they automatically want to start with the whole building. I want to build this thing and hire these developers and blah 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 blah. And I'm just like, well, hold on for a second. Do you know if anybody actually even needs this? And not only that, would they pay for it? Right? I've had that from a technical standpoint and from having friends. who say like, "Hey, I've got this idea for this app," and they're not technical at all. These idea people, and they automatically want to go out and start paying someone tens of thousands of dollars to develop it. And I'm just
Yep.
like there's software out there that'll actually help you do a mock-up. Like it's just a
Yes.
mock-up. Like it's just, and you don't even have to. You're not paying thousands of dollars for this at all, but it'll give you enough of something to show someone, and then from there you can get feedback on whether or not this is even something you should even pursue, because you don't even know
Exactly.
that yet. So instead of sinking money into something, like why don't you ask? I would say ask. Like I always tell them, what do I say? I call it market research. That's what I said.
Hmm. Hmm.
Find a bunch of people and just ask them to evaluate, and then at the end say, hey, would you pay for this, and how much would you pay for this? 10, 15, whatever, before you go building anything. Like let's not go that far yet. And so yeah, I see this particular situation play out like all the time. So that's super good advice. Like talk to people. And another thing I wanted to touch on is like that whole feedback loop. Like a lot of people, there are people out there that don't understand like this constant feedback loop and what iteration will
Yeah.
get you. And I work as a DevOps engineer, and that's one of the core tenets of DevOps is that you have this feedback loop that constantly cycles back to you about things that you're building and creating, so that you can understand when things fail, and what things may or may not need to be added or taken away. Like you constantly have to have this, or else you're going to build something that nobody wants, and it's all going to be in the image that you thought it was. And there's all these people out there that'll look at it like this is nothing like I wouldn't have asked for this, and this, but you thought, because you didn't ask anyone, and you just went and built it. You passed on your preferences to other people, and that's just not the way things should be.
Yeah, and it helps you to so one of the expensive lessons that I learned, I have a coach that I work with, and she's constantly telling me, it's easier to have a dinner if people are contributing to the process. You can either say, hey, I'm gonna have this dinner, it's gonna be a 7 course meal or 4 course meal or whatever. Here it starts at 8, be there. Or you could say, hey, we're building something. Can somebody give me some ideas of what the course should be? Oh, you can make the dessert. Oh, cool. Well, let's do that together.
Yeah,
And it's easier to get over that. Oh, I have to have it perfect, I have to have it done, it has to have so many features before I get started. If you kind of keep people in the loop while you're building, say, okay, well, we got this little part first, just tell me what you think about this, and then you just build on top of it.
yeah.
um, it's helpful.
I love that. I love that dinner party analogy. Like that simplifies it so much. Like
Mhm.
you could give someone that analogy, and automatically they're gonna get it right. So I love that. I'll start using that. Tell us about a recent success story that came out of Ruby Leaf Media, if you can. Like I don't know like how, if any of this stuff is top secret, or if there's NDAs involved, but if you can tell us about a recent success story.
I'll do one that's personal to me. So
Okay.
I do work with other accelerators. So one of the accelerators that I work with was one that's called Builders and Backers. I'm on as a builder in residence, and so they have people who have an idea. Their whole tenet is, being able to, in 90 days you're working towards an idea. They give you a little bit of funds, maybe $5,000 to build an MVP, or um get some validation under your belt quickly, and in a way that doesn't require you to, like you said, have thousands of dollars spent for marketing or developers or things like that. And so being able to work with them, the cool thing was they work with different regions in the the country. And one of the regions that I was able to be paired up with was a few that I lived in as a military kid. So we used to live in Alabama. We went to Virginia, and had a couple of builders in my cohort that was building out healthcare or community apps for that region, and it just meant a lot for me to almost come full circle and help ideas and builders that was from a region that hadn't been in since my elementary school days. And so still healthcare, still an idea, still like let's build something together. And they were able to at the end have done a couple of experiments, if you will, of like how this is how I can validate an idea and get some traction. And so the cohort that I was working with, they all got their funding to get the experiments up and going. And they were able to impact their community and invite their community to help them in the building process. And
Oh,
so
nice.
I have a lot of stories like that are kind of, they're special to me. I have some where, I'm
Yeah,
involved with companies that are raising multi-million dollars, and they get the traction and things like that. But I really do value in the ones that I can give a little bit more detail around how people are interacting with their community on an idea that was just an idea, but now they have something to build upon.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. It's always a little bit more special when it's something that really involves like helping the community out. There's always that kind of like the social aspect to it, that social, I guess, socially responsible, like that aspect.
Hmm.
It's more of a feel good thing than anything else. Like, yeah, you can go with a company that can raise millions of dollars, but when it's impacting the community that you grew up in or that you love, or something like that, then it feels a bit different.
Yeah,
Um,
and they all low code, no code tools. They were able to access, and so
nice,
you really got to see barriers being lifted. Like you could build something like tomorrow.
nice. So, what do you do outside? Like, what are some non-sciency, non-tech things that you do, hobbies or whatever, um, that takes up some of your time when you're not, out there helping startups and startup companies and doing accelerators and things like that.
That's a really good question. It takes up a lot of my time, but I do probably out of maybe a testament to being in Nashville, Music City. I do love to be in the music scene. I play the saxophone and the piano. My husband also plays the saxophone,
Nice,
and we like hearing the jazz bands, like the student bands, the regional bands, and being able to I used to play in different churches and things like that, but just keep up with the music scene, uh,
nice,
and being able to just kind of um, garden a little bit. We've gotten on this kick where we're trying to plant a couple of different varieties. My mother-in-law bought this one plant for me that has blossomed, and it's given me this great self-esteem around. Oh, maybe I can keep a plant alive. So we're trying a little bit more plant-based projects. So that keeps up. That keeps
nice. Yeah, I'm not a green thumb. My wife does all the plants in our house and things like. I'll water them from time to time, but I'm not the person that's going to go and plant them and things like that. My
me.
mom was a huge green thumb. She loved plants, and it just never carried down to me. I'm more on the tech side. Like, I like the tech stuff, and that's it. Like, now, if it was something that was doing some pretty cool stuff with plants and tech, like, I probably would be into it a little bit more. But my wife always talks about getting a farm and gardening, and I'm just like, I'm from the
Oh,
city. I don't want to. My garden and my farm is Kroger. Like, we'll go to the grocery store and Check out.
I
We'll,
hear you.
we'll do organic this time. How about that? If that
I was
helps.
we're trying to do like the little
Um,
herbs.
good.
Uh, we're I feel like that's the starter level. I haven't
Mm,
graduated from it yet, so all of those have died.
that's funny. Another interesting thing is that my daughter, she went to the School for Creative and Performing Arts. She was part of their jazz band. She played jazz trombone. So
Oh
she's
wow!
a huge jazz lover. Yeah, yeah. And I went to performing arts too. I played in a band. I played the flute though. And I only stayed there for a couple of years. My daughter graduated from there. She went from fifth grade to graduation. And she played in the jazz band the entire time. So I have a deep appreciation for music of any sort. She's a self-taught keyboardist, guitarist. What else is
Wow,
she? She can sing, write music. Like she's way more musically inclined than I was. But yeah, so we like jazz. We like that whole thing. So it's pretty cool.
it's special. It's
Um,
special, and that's great to hear.
yeah, yeah. Um, she had a really good teacher there. His name was I think it was Irwin Stuckey, which I think his
Hmm.
name was. Really good jazz. Yeah, we would go to all her concerts, and they were phenomenal. Like her jazz band was phenomenal. So it was a good time. What's next for Ruby Leaf Media?
So I'm I'm practicing what I'm preaching and doing some I'm currently doing some more customer discovery and asking more questions around how we can um, cut more checks to underrepresented and underestimated founders in terms of angel investing and VC investing. One of my good mentors, her name is Dr. Dawn Batts. She really opened my eyes to the process of how investment gets deployed to the companies and the
Mm-hmm.
founders, particularly in the high tech space. And so being able to include in my support, how do you how can I help to enable some of this funding to go to underestimated founders is definitely something that's on my radar. Being able to do both things, hold the space where yes, we know that venture capital less than 3% goes to women or underrepresented minority founders, and being able to say
Mm-hmm.
expertise and the milestones to get you to these really successful exits. How do you bridge this gap basically? And
Yeah.
so I'm learning more about the dilutive funding space and how I can help support the funds that are investing in these underestimated founders, and what I can do to support, and what Ruby Leap can do to support them, because it definitely is a a subject that's ripe for transformation. It's been ripe, so
Yeah.
that's something that I've been setting my sights on recently.
Okay. And so what's next for you?
Well, being able to actually, if you don't mind, there is a Black Angel Forum that I'm helping to organize that'll take place in Detroit. It's going to be a conversation of all of the Black Angel. Was going out to all the Black Angel groups and individuals. I'm helping to organize this space for them to share their problems, their pain points, their goals and aspirations. Um, really looking forward to helping out the team in that capacity. It's a collective between a lot of different groups, but being able to help facilitate that conversation is what's next on the horizon for me, and then being able
Yeah.
to implement some of that into how I support these organizations. That's it for me. Other than that, we planted a Japanese maple tree. We're just trying to help it survive, and fingers crossed that'll make it through the summer. It's looking a little trouble. That's my goals in the meantime.
Nice. Yeah, I don't have any advice for you on with maple trees. I would just say water it. That's like the safe the safe advice. Just water it. So how can folks follow you, follow Ruby Leaf Media? How can they, follow you to learn more?
The best way right now is to connect with me on LinkedIn. I
Okay.
try to post my company's post on there as well as different events that I go to and that I think is really great for founders who are trying to establish their tribe. I'm in the middle of building out what that looks like, but that's probably the best way to find me and all the various projects
Okay.
that I'm doing.
Excellent. Excellent. And I will put a link to that in the show notes to your LinkedIn page. I do want to say this, like, if there is anything that I can do, that Bit can do to help accelerate what you're doing in any capacity, even if it's just that, hey, do anyone who does so and so, or can you connect me? I see this person that's connected with you on LinkedIn. Can you, like, don't hesitate to reach out to me via email, via LinkedIn, or however you need to. Like this whole thing, Blacks in Technology, is not just about my organization or the community that I build. It's about helping other people. Um, and other organizations that have like a similar vision to what we're trying to do, and with you helping underrepresented, underestimated founders, I think that that aligns perfectly with what we're trying to do as a whole. So just feel free to reach out and say, hey, even if it's, hey, do you think Bit might want to be involved? We've got chapters up in Detroit as well. So we can assist somehow, some way to get the word out. Then we'll do that.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being willing to connect, and I've been following the other podcasts and the resources. You guys do a great job, and is really a staple
Appreciate
in
that.
being able to give these resources out to the founders and all things tech. So I really appreciate your guys' work as well. But thank you. I will take you up on the connections.
Yeah.
I'll try to connect as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Dr. Pierce, for joining us tonight. I really appreciate you talking about your journey, talking about the things that Ruby Leaf Media is doing. And we wish you the best of luck. And maybe we'll follow up sometime in the future and find out what you're up to.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.
You too.
Thank you, everyone, for checking out this episode of the Bit Tech Talk podcast. If you liked and saw what you heard, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel and stay in tune with us for our next episode. Until then, keep stomping the divide.